introduce to us the host and the editor, FUNAB Journals, Professor Eyitayo Makinde. Please, sir, to your seat. And also, I would like to introduce our resource person, Professor Eva Barayova from Mendel University, Czech Republic. You're welcome. Please, ma'am, have your seat. Thank you very much, ma'am. So we'll all rise up as we take the national and FUNAB anthems. Thank you very much. As we take our seats, we'd like to invite the chief host of this event, the Vice Chancellor, Professor Kolawole, the Vice Chancellor, Professor Babatunde Kehinde, represented by the DVC Development, Professor Kola Adebayo, for his opening remarks.
The editor-in-chief of the University Journal, Professor Makinde, our distinguished guest, Professor Eva Barayova, distinguished colleagues, members of the editorial team of the University Journal, on behalf of the Vice Chancellor, Professor Babatunde Olushola Kehinde. I welcome you to this morning's gathering, which is one of these capacity development programs that the university has put in place through the journal office to enhance the capacity of our research and academic staff in the preparation, submission, and management of your publication processes. We have with us the editor-in-chief of one of the oldest journals in the world today, Professor Barayova, who we are chanced by the instrumentality of long-term partnership with some of our senior members of staff to visit this university. And we thought it's a great opportunity for us to enjoy the wealth of our experience and to rub minds on how best to improve our global visibility as a university. Prof, you are welcome once again to the Federal University of Agriculture, Abeokuta. The Times Higher Education World Universities Ranking ranked our university the best university of agriculture in Africa for 2024 and the 7th best in the world. And we want to continue on this trajectory, and that is why we felt that this unique opportunity of having you on our campus, we should take advantage of it and benefit from your interaction with our faculty. Thank you very much. Distinguished colleagues, I commit you to the hands of our resource person. Please, let's pay attention, let's ask questions, let's make the best advantage of this opportunity. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir. We want to listen to a brief introduction of the research person from Professor Sunday Adigbo.
The Vice Chancellor, sir, the Editor-in-Chief of FACET, our honorable distinguished visitor, and my colleagues, give a brief introduction of our visitor. Our visitor is seasoned editor-in-chief. She has been in this business for the past 53 years, and she has retired but not tired. And she has come to share her wealth of experience. She's from Mendel University. She is the chief editor-in-chief of the journal, as earlier stated by our Vice Chancellor. So we want to invite her through the protocol officer to come and do what she likes doing best. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. It's like we now have a fuller house, and I would love to welcome every participant here present. We thank you for your time, for coming. So now we invite Professor, our resource person for today, Professor Eva Barayova, for her presentation. You're welcome.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. This is my sincere thanks to the representative of this wonderful university for inviting me to come. This is a fantastic experience, my first visit to your continent and to Nigeria. So that is a real special occasion for me. I would like to talk a little bit about writing a scientific article. You certainly know very well how to do things, but there are still some points that are maybe worth of mentioning. And therefore, I prepared 3 presentations for today's workshop. Just a bit of geography at the beginning. I looked up in Wikipedia the territory of, yes?
He wants to leave, so we want to take a good photograph before he goes.
Pardon?
He wants to leave, so we want to take a good photograph.
Oh, I
So
see.
let's quickly take a good
All right.
Let's give it a pause.
Please, before we continue, with the permission of the Vice Chancellor, we would like to take the group photograph now before the lecture continues proper.
Thank you very much. Thank you. All right. So let's go to work now. I've prepared a few, just a little information where I come from. On the right-hand side, you see the map of Europe, and the dark point is the Czech Republic. The Republic is not as dark as it looks on this little slide. And on the left-hand side, you see it a little bit more detail. Our neighbor countries are in the north, Poland. On the east side is Slovakia, then Hungary, Austria, and Germany on the west. And we could place about 12 Czech republics into the territory of Nigeria. So just a little bit of basic information. And another Africa has always been a fascinating continent for us. And I would like to mention Dr. Emil Holub, who was a very clever person, a physician, ethnologist, and traveler, who was the first, at the time where we belonged to Austrian monarchy. He made his first travel to South Africa in the years of 1872 until 1879. And then a few years later, he made another expedition. And we had all his wonderful books. And there is in Prague a museum with his vast collection of ethnographic materials that he was able to collect in African countries. So there is the information about this continent is quite well. And this is another a couple of two young explorers. These were the Czech engineers, Hanzelka and Sigmund, who were very famous travelers, and their biggest travel was to Africa. That took 3 years, and everybody was sitting on the radios, because at those times we had no television yet, and everybody was listening to their reportage on the radio. So they were two fascinating people. So that's just a little bit of, let's say, introduction into what we will do next. Now I'm going back to our topic, which is science and scientific writing. The American physiologist Walter Bradford Cannon said a sentence that I like very much: science is our quest for truth. And I think we should always be aware of this fact. Another one who produced a lot of very interesting and truthful sentences. I like this citation of Albert Einstein: if you can't explain it simply, you don't understand it well enough, which is really true, because we have to master the principle of our problems. And I couldn't resist to add another sentence by Albert Szent-Györgyi, who was another physiologist and Nobel Prize recipient. And he says, research is to see what everybody else has seen and to think what nobody else has thought. And that is the essence of it, the originality, because that is what counts in science, to come with something new, with a new idea. And the last Nobel Prize person I would like to mention, this lady visited our country in 2012, Ada Yonath. She won the Nobel Prize 2009, and she said very nicely about science, the truth is what matters, and it is the greatest reward is the discovery itself. And she says, Nobel Prize is nice. It is hanging on my wall in my room. But the true happiness is the new understanding. And this is something that we should always bear in mind, to find something new. That is the adventure of science. A few more thoughts by other people. It is about the good question is one whose answer will matter. The answer should change something, should make something better. That's our quest in science. And the first step in every research project is to very clearly and well state the aims of our quest, the aims of our work. And the last one, this was a sentence by Drummond Rennie, who used to be the editor-in-chief of the American Medical Journal. He says, science does not exist unless it is published. as long as we have our protocols and research data in your drawer and they are not shared, they are in fact non-existent. Therefore, we have to open ourselves, and in fact, you have to realize that science is not an individual experience, not an individual effort, but it is a shared knowledge about this world, an understanding of everything in the physical, social, and biological world that is around us. And there are, of course, some social conventions and rules that have developed in publishing science, in communicating science since the, say, 16th, 17th century, the period of enlightenment. And it is also something that makes the trustworthiness of scientific knowledge really important. The shared knowledge means published discoveries, shared discoveries, and credit to the discoverer, credit to the person who came with a new finding about these worlds. And as I already mentioned, science without communicating is as non-existent. Therefore, it is not complete until we write up our results and produce a scientific paper. And so the writing is an absolutely integral part of any research. Even if we love to do experiments on animals and plants, but hate writing, it doesn't help us a lot because we really have to write up what we have done. And also, it is important that our thinking and writing are very intimately interwoven. Without logical thinking, we cannot write well. And that is something that we also should bear in mind. And the last little point is that thinking of our future reader is an integral part of this process. In a different tone, we would write for a newspaper or for a magazine for children, and in different tone, we will write for a top scientific journal. So each type of audience or readership has to obtain the right tone and right type of language, which in scientific language should be really well prepared and well done. And if we want to do something really good for science, and we have to pose a qualified question, which is a result of a systematic and good study of the relevant literature. We have to also to keep a good archive of our papers that we have studied, because we will need them in writing up the work we have done. And there is nothing worse than when you know exactly how an article looks like and just cannot find it. So therefore, a good archiving is very important. And also, it is very useful. Now, in old times, we had to ask for reprints from all the world, and on the reprints, we were also making our notes. Now, you click on your computer and ask for a PDF from Japan, from Brazil, and you have it in 2 minutes in your computer, which is a completely different situation. And yet, it is quite useful to print out these papers and to put your own notes on that, your ideas about that article that you just studied and read. And when you do it with your own words, it is a very good prevention of what we call plagiarism. So this is also a very good thing. Now, when we are looking for information, you know, a lot of scientific databases, just to a little bit to sum up. I put together a few of these databases that are important for us in agriculture and life sciences. I'm sure you know these. I don't think it's necessary to go into into details. The one that is developing very much is now this American Archives. Oops, doesn't want to cooperate. The last line that is operated by Cornell University in United States. And then there is a huge one in India that is called JGate that is covering now more than 50,000 journals, and they have about 71 million of articles, adding about 15,000 per day, which is hard to imagine. And then we have the medical American Medline with also lots of records with their National Library of Medicine that is issuing the Index Medicus. And then we have others, Science Direct, Clover, and so forth. And there is a big one. I just was looking a few days ago, the African Research Database that is uniting 15 countries, and there are many repositories of science and lots of publications. So all this we have now at hand to pose a good research question for ourselves. And I would also like to mention now the era of open access journals is from, let's say, the beginning of this century. And if you want to choose a journal, the directory of open access journals is a very useful resource to find a good journal, because in DORA you find very good information about all journals that are covered by this database, and it shows the frequency, the rating of the journals, and all kinds of useful information. So this is why I'm mentioning this directory of open access journals to you. Well, when we start doing our research, it is important to use what is called the scientific methods. We have to pose a question, make some first preliminary experiment to see whether a substance, for example, that we are studying is really efficient and active. Then we put together the hypothesis, do the experiment, make the calculations, and present the results at the end to our scientific community. No, it doesn't work. But the little drawing on the right-hand side I like better, because it shows not only the good and the positive results, but you see in the middle figure with hanging hands down, which means that you are at a point where your results are not really very good, and you are just at the brink of despair. But we never should despair, because you can repeat the experiments and make another circle, and then hurrah, we are landing at the good results that are publishable and that contribute to the knowledge, and that also prove that our hypothesis was correct. So just in brief here, identify and define the problem, ask the question, do the background research, make some observations, construct your hypothesis, test the hypothesis by doing an experiment, analyze your data and draw conclusions. Report your results. Was your hypothesis correct? And what is very fascinating about research is the cyclic nature of scientific research, because here on the left you can see we are asking our question, then we do our measurements, obtain much of our data. Those data you see downstairs, they are analyzed, and we get the replies to our questions. But there is usually not one reply. There is one reply, some more, but in addition, there are more questions coming. And that is the fascinating point about research, so that we can follow a spiral going up to new and new knowledge. So that is the nature of the research. Hypothesis, it is something that helps us to answer our question, and we know that the null hypothesis, for example, between two groups, there is no difference. If we take a very simple example, that in the incidence of gallstones between men and women aged 20 to 30 years, there is no difference. That would be the null hypothesis, and the alternative hypothesis would be there is a difference between the two groups. So in an original paper, we should really take care to formulate, to ask our question and to formulate it into a hypothesis. Now, what are the criteria for publishing a research article? The information, as I said, must be new. It should enrich our knowledge, and it should be not yet published, and also it should be presented at the right time. I'm reminded here of two Nobel Prize recipients, Peter Lauterbur and Peter Mansfield. These two gentlemen were studying the movements of atoms and molecules in magnetic field by the end of the 1960s and early 70s. And they submitted their original finding to the journal Science. The manuscript was rejected. They worked further on their questions, and they also observed other organisms in magnetic field. And in the end, their work was acknowledged, and that was the basis of magnetic resonance in medicine. So if these two gentlemen would have put their results into the drawer and forgot about magnetic field and atoms, medicine wouldn't have magnetic resonance method today. And this is something to show that the scientific community at the time of their discovery could not yet anticipate what importance this finding could have, what importance would develop out of this first relatively simple finding. So this is something to stress that the new ideas have to be presented at the right time. And this is the case not only for these two scientists, but several other Nobel Prize recipients had a similar experience when the scientific community was not yet so far as to understand what it means. The publication has to be true. The construction should be very logical, conclusions exact and complete. And of course, it has to be important for the readership, for the scientific community, and also it has to be important in context with knowledge that is already existent. And it has to be understandable, which means it should be well composed, the data well presented, and written in a scholarly style. Scholarly style is what we are using in science. So the organization of a primary article in Life Sciences is so that we have to define the problem. What is the problem I'm studying? That should be presented in the introduction. How will I do it? This is material and methods. What did I find? These are the results. And what Doesn't work anymore. Oh. And what does it mean for science? And that is then discussion. This, you know very well, the structure of this article is so-called IMRAD, Introduction, Material, Methods, Results, and Discussion. And as authors, we usually ask a few more questions. What is known about the problem I'm interested in? But more exciting is, oh, fine, thank you very much. What is not known about it? Oops. What is then my basic question? And what is the new aspect of my research? What is the answer to my question? And how will my work complete the knowledge about the problem under study? So this is the basics. And when we are writing our original, or as it's sometimes called, primary research article, we have to be very careful. We have to express our thoughts and not impress our readership by the extent of our knowledge. We have to dose correctly the information we are providing. So there, for example, has to be some kind of a core concept with basic ideas at 3 levels. There is the big level of the document that has to be logically organized, all the basic data. Then there is the level of paragraph, which again has to be well organized and supporting all sentences. And each paragraph should have a main idea. And the same goes for the sentence, which again should have some logical order of words in every single sentence. So the introduction is based on the literature that we have so thoroughly studied for a few months, identify the question and see whether we can find an answer. We have to put our own work into context, into good context with what has already been discovered, with all the present knowledge, and describe the new different aspects of our work. So the introduction should go from the general to specific point. Our point will be the specific part of it. And for introduction, the citations should be in present tense. The knowledge has already been generally accepted, and it is good to cite only relevant sources. Many editors do recommend to use about 3 citations for each important fact in the introduction. But we should not omit some references or citations of papers that are known as seminal papers. A seminal paper is one that really opens a new area of research. And also, we should not be afraid to mention any contradictory data if it is necessary, if it helps to put our research into a good point of attention of our readers. And then in the last paragraph, we should present the hypothesis, as I mentioned earlier. Introduction should not be too long. In science writing, long is worse. It is tiring for the reader, and it should be very well balanced in its extent to the other parts of the article. And the previous findings are already accepted by the scientific community, and they are considered as facts. So it is not necessary to mention the reporting or that something is known. For example, here it has been previously reported that the dinosaurs became extinct. The red sign can be omitted and the sentence can be shortened nicely. The dinosaurs became extinct and include the citations. Yeah. And here I have some examples of well-presented research questions. I borrow these examples from Professor Hall, who is doing such workshops in Holland. And the first one, if you read it, it shows very nicely what was the aim of the study. Well, we addressed the following question: what retrospective meteorological factors correlate significantly with subsequent malaria epidemics in Ethiopia? And it is very clearly and nicely presented. And a similar case is the second one. You can read it for yourself. And this, I think, both are examples of good writing. Material and methods. This is a part of a manuscript that is easiest to write, yet often it has flaws that cause rejection of the manuscript. We have to mention all the subject studies or the animals: age, sex, breed, groups, numbers, nutrition, diets, health state, daily regimen. Then the same goes for plant material with all the details. If there are animals or human beings, the subjects of the study, we need the ethical committee approval or any kind of approval, informed consent in medical research, for example. And we must mention exactly the procedures, all the treatments with details that are necessary. Drugs, chemicals, brand, a lot, country of origin, and of course all the equipment, origin of it, description, all these details have to be there. Then very important is the proper presentation of all statistical methods. Those should be consulted beforehand with a statistician. Now we have the discipline even of biostatistics. So statisticians are trained in work with animal and living creatures. Then prepare some flow charts or schemes of an experiment, whatever we need. We need to keep good protocols, and importantly, archiving is important, because nowadays in many sciences we have some kind of meta-analysis done, for example, in medicine. And those meta-analysis can only be done if the data are available, if the papers and the necessary things, all the details are presented, so that the persons who is doing the meta data analysis should have all information available. And materials and methods should also be written in the past tense. It is when you only expect that your results will become knowledge to your scientific community. So past tense is the appropriate one for material and methods. There are some problems with this part. For example, lack of control groups or inadequate sample size. For example, if you are doing research on chickens, there many values are very much variable. So for example, if you are involved in hematology of poultry, it is always good to have the groups for analysis, at least 5 or even better, 10 animals, 10 birds, 2 or 3 chickens for cholesterol or glucose is just not enough. So these details we have to bear in mind. Then another problem is inadequate description of methodology. So we have to pay attention really to all details, to temperatures, to relative humidity, and to all other factors. Then inadequate explanation of the study design. How the groups are treated, when the experiment began, and so forth. Insufficient information about the study object, that also comes rather often to the fore. And another rather serious problem is selection of inappropriate statistical methods and even faulty data, and also then the tests that are not working well. And we should also be careful and not mix the method section with results. Oops. The next chapter, the results, they must contain everything that was mentioned in material in method. We cannot include here something that was not described in the previous chapter. In the text, it is for the scientific paper good to only comment the data and not repeat them from the graphs or from your tables. When you write your PhD thesis, it is okay, it is acceptable, because a thesis has a bigger extent and this can be tolerated. But many editors will ask you, please do not repeat the numbers and the results of t-test in the text of the results. It is sometimes when there is a lot to report, it is also troublesome for the reader to go through all these things when it is clearly presented in the table. Just comment the development, how the phenomenon is changing from date 1 to date 2, time such and such, and it helps to keep the manuscript well organized. And the results as well should be written in past tense, and that is because we again expect only that our scientific community will accept our work. And very important is paying due attention to all illustrations, whether it is tables or graphs. We have to decide well what to put in rows or in columns in tables. And here, for example, this is a graph showing quite unnecessarily a lot of information. There are 4 very simple lines, and the authors are using 4 colors, 4 types of symbols, and even 4 types of the lines. One is full, one is dotted, which is completely unnecessary because there are only 4 simple lines. So one type of distinction would be enough, either color or the symbols or the dotted or other types of lines. And moreover, when probably you can't see the details very well, but here you can see there is also a letter missing. And now when I was young, we were taught that all graphs that are not beginning with a 0 here, that these lines have to be separated. There should be clearly shown that it is not the 0 point. But now with all the modern technology, I think the young people who are preparing the software for this, for making graphs and so, maybe never heard of these old good principles. And so you can see here a graph that's starting at -8 and here plus 1.5. And so these are the modern times and new developments. That's such is life. Whoops. And this graph again shows, this is information about fishing results in the months of the year from January to December. And on this doesn't cooperate again. The upper left part has there are 100 kilograms, and the lower part on the left-hand side has only 20 units. So the graph is not in correct dimensions, the two parts of it. And so after correction, you can see on the right-hand side, and you see the dimensions are quite different, because the 20% are now in good correlation with the upper part of the graph. And so we have to be really very careful about this. Thank you. And here is an example of a table that is not really needed, because you see all the values are repeating in the columns, and the contents of this table could be very easily, thank you. The contents of this table, all the streptococci and lactobacilli, could be presented just in one sentence. So there is no need for a table like this. What are the common flaws in the chapter of results? Illogical sequence of data presentation. So again, we should follow the pattern of writing up. We also see sometimes that the results are not really original, that they are predictable, and this is something that the editors and peer reviewers then point out, and this can be a reason for rejecting a manuscript. Another problem is when the data are inaccurate, when there are errors in analysis, and when the scientists are using wrong text. Repetition of data in the text and tables, as I already said. And another little flaw, which is not so serious, but still it has to be corrected, when the tables and graphs are not cited in text, so that the reader has to look for where these data, where this table really belongs. And the graphs, unless we are doing 3 dimensions, it's not necessary to use 3D graphs. And very often you can see the wrong scales. That was the graph on the fishing I just showed you. Discussion is what I call is the pearl of your article or of your PhD thesis. And I would always advise, prepare yourself for writing of the discussion. Make it a pleasure to yourself, because the discussion, it shows your intellectual work. That is the part, because here you put together your finding and you put them in context what is already known. And therefore, it should obtain the best time of your preparation of the manuscript, and you should really devote a lot of attention to this part of the work. And I can assure you, each peer reviewer of your PhD thesis and your article will see and be able to understand that it was written in a very hasty manner. So give it time, write it with your good atmosphere, and that will show in well-prepared sentences, in well-presented context of your work. So you show how the data are supporting the previous knowledge. It explains what is important and what is new in your research. And then you comment on data of other authors. And we also should not be afraid of discussion with data that are in contrast with ours. And so as the introduction went from the general to specific, our discussion should go from the specific to the general. If you just remember these two triangles today, it will be fine. And as I said, it is the most important part and also most difficult to write. We have to critically evaluate the results, compare and seek support for our hypothesis in the work that has previously been done. And again, here it is better when we use past tense for our own results, whereas the cited work can be and is mostly presented in the present, in present. So this is about discussion and what are the possible flaws. For example, the conclusions are not supporting the data. And the result then is that the conclusions we are drawing are not really correct, and that is a problem. Incorrect interpretation of results, that can also happen. So it is very important to do a good analysis of what we have done. And also some authors tend to avoid discussion on some unexpected finding. We don't have to be afraid of that, because the new knowledge always has some sort of risk in it. The discussion can also be inadequate with ignoring the recent new data. So we really have to follow the literature all the time. It's not enough to prepare for our study and then not follow what's going on the Web of Science and so forth. All the time we have to be up to date with literature, because something that will help us can occur anytime. We also should not repeat the results from the section of results. It may be then too long, it may be too meandering, it may be just too verbose. Even the discussion should be kept in a good proportion with other types of the article. Conclusions. There are just a few sentences at the end of discussion, especially in the PhD thesis, you have this conclusion. And when I was thinking about this, I found on the internet this very nice link that is by one of the British universities with a lovely description of all manuscript parts. So I would really suggest to you, look into these materials. Nowadays, everything can be found on the internet. And this is something that I would really recommend. Abstract is something that we need to write, and it is best to write it at the end. It should be exact, self-contained, which means that the reader should understand what the work was about, even in using these few words. And it has to be easy to comprehend. For example, we should not use abbreviations or graphs or citations in the abstract. It has to be specific, which means that each and every sentence should inform in an unambiguous way. The reader has to comprehend. It should not evaluate, it should just inform the reader. And must be very well readable. You have certainly the experience when you submit an abstract to a conference, you have usually that window and it says 300 words. And when you put the word number 301, it doesn't allow you to do it. So this is a good training how to make your abstract short enough as requested by the journals. I have here an example of an edited abstract, or I mean a part of the abstract. And just read it for yourself. And I just wanted to point out here that the important information is best put at the beginning. Read it for yourself, and I have a drink in the meantime. So this is a little example of the editorial work. Well, because this is the most important thing, pathogenicity of bacterial strains isolated, and here it was hidden in the text. So it's much better to present it right at the beginning of that sentence. And the so-called structured or informative abstract. And this repeats, in fact, what I told you about the research questions at the beginning. What was the aim of my work? 1 or 2 sentences. What have I done? Describe the materials, methods, examples, and all the samples, etc. What have I discovered? These are the results, and some journals now accept and even require the most important results of statistical evaluation, for example, giving the p-values or something else. And the fourth is, what does that mean for science? And here it is, there is an editorial test, so what? I must say that I'm asking this question rather frequently, because when we receive manuscripts, for example, the author says, I don't know, the fish had such and such blood glucose value and the p-value, and that is the end of the abstract. And that's my turn to ask, so what? What does it mean? And that is what the author very often forgets to say. So please do never forget to give that take-away message for the reader. It's not the last p-value, it is what comes after that. So this is something that is rather often the problem. There is another type of abstract, the so-called indicative abstract, which you found in review articles. And this is mostly narrative in its form. It indicates the contents of the article, but it does not provide any data. And this is, as I said, for review articles in life sciences and also in other humanities and social sciences. When I mention the review articles, I would like to recommend you look for review articles in your field of interest, because review articles are mostly written by top experts in the fields, and you can learn a lot from these. Most review articles also contain some 100 or 120 references. And those references are again references of original papers. So a good review article helps you not only to get a perspective of that top expert in your field, but it gives you also an array of other articles that you can pick out of his references and get the articles for yourself. So that is, review articles are very, very important and useful. Keywords. This serves the databases for indexing and for easy retrieval of articles. They have to follow the abstract, as you well know, and they should not repeat terms from the title. We should really be very careful about that, and they need to be specific. If you have some interdisciplinary research, it is good to provide data from all these parts of science. And there was some research done on what are some good keywords. And when you, for example, look into the Web of Science, under the abstract, you have the author's keywords, and very often there are additional keywords. And this is something where we can learn very well how to better make our own keywords for the journal. Now, the last important part is the title, because this is the first information about the article in all the databases. It must be prepared with utmost care. And we should not use, for example, expressions such as, this was a study of, this attempt to prepare, attempt to compare, preliminary study, and so forth. There are editors who, for example, say, send us the manuscript if it is the definitive version, not a preliminary one. So this, I wouldn't like for you that this happens. The title also must be brief, if possible, and specific. There are some journals that, for example, give you 90 letters to provide a title. So it's good to have a training in that. And it must be unambiguous. It must clearly say what the article is about. Because a well-prepared abstract really makes your chances better that the article will be indexed in many databases and will also be attractive for your readership. That is the first that sells your science. We have the so-called indicative abstract. Here you have the example, multi-drug regimen for treatment of metastatic cancer. The second one is informative. This is a very long one, and it essentially tells you what happened in that work. And now this last type with the question mark at the end is sometimes accepted, but some journals do not like this kind of titles. And here, this was a very interesting little event. I saw this, this was a poster at a conference, the determination of testosterone, esters, and estradiol in bovine and porcine blood serum. So the title looks fine, but when I read the whole poster, I realized that the authors missed their good chance, because this was, in fact, the first it's a completely new approach to the question. So if they would add one word, a new determination method, they would have attracted much more attention. You see, so this one little word makes a lot of difference, because this seems so neutral, the title. So it's always use your chance and don't be afraid to say what is important in your study, even in the title. So I have here this title. Do we learn something from the title? We don't, because it is so general that it certainly is not the effect of all antibiotics and all bacteria. So I modify it slightly. Do I learn a little more from this one? The same thing, but a few more words. Again, which antibiotics and which bacteria? So I play further. Effect of streptomycin on Mycobacterium avium. What effect? And when I modified it to growth inhibition of Mycobacterium avium by streptomycin, I have a title that is short and it says everything that is needed. So I would recommend you all to do this play. Our professor at the Department of Physiology, when I was working since I was a student, he had the principle when we submitted a manuscript to him for approval before it goes out for a conference or for publication, we always had to submit it with 5 variations of the title. And I can tell you with this, I have done this my whole life, and it really is very good because you reflect about the words, the significance of each word, which is so important for the title. And my recommendation from my heart to all of you is try to do this. And when you write those 5 or 6 titles, put it in your drawer for a week or 2, then take it out with a manuscript, and then you will wonder, oh my God, what have I written here? Or you find this is the best one. And then you really have a good chance to choose the best title, and have a good chance that your article and your manuscript will be accepted. Now, here just a few examples of improved titles. This is again something that we obtained, ontogeny of age-related changes in the hematological values of green iguana. Now, what is ontogeny? Ontogeny is age-related changes. So the author here is saying twice the same thing. So what is here underlined, we just left out and left the age-related changes of the hematological, not values, but profile is better. And we have a title that is much nicer. And it's true, because why to say twice the same thing? And very similar is the second example, assessment of susceptibility and so forth. And we have here using agar dilution method and epsilometer test. So again, assessment of is something that we can just delete. And the same thing is we can delete the word method, and the title has a little bit more air in it, and it tells exactly the same thing with fewer words. And the same, very similar is here. Again, we just move the word blood to the beginning, and here there was the prepositions were not correct. So this is just a few examples of how we can play and improve the titles. And some more advice. There is the so-called KISS principle. Keep it short and simple. That is something that I would really advise to keep. Here are some databases where you can find a lot of information about writing. We really now have such a variety of advice to be sought that it's just incredible. Now, usage of active and passive voice. The sentence examination of patients was carried out is fine. But why should I not say I examine the patients or we examine the patients? A separation of the compounds was accomplished. I would say the compounds were separated. It's simpler, it's shorter, and it's, let's say, also better for the reader. Active and passive voice, again, the screening procedure is illustrated in figure 5, or figure 5 illustrates the screening procedure. Standardized breakfasts were consumed by all subjects. All subjects ate a standardized diet. Very simple. Verbs. This is a very nice class about which we should always think. We performed a systematic review of the literature, which is fine, but the word review is very active. We can say we systematically review the literature, and again save a few words. Then the verbs change, influence, alter, and modify. In fact, they have no direction. The reader must guess what the change really is. When we say the treatment altered the size of the tumor, how? Did it become smaller or bigger or what? So it is better to replace these words with, for example, decrease, increase, enlarge, shrink, reduce. And we end up with the treatment reduced the size of the tumor. And it is exact information. The reader knows what is happening. Then the verbs increase, decrease, reduce do carry the time factor. When you think about it, increase in what time? In a week, in a month, in a year? So, for example, when we have here a sentence, compared to the placebo group, tumor size was reduced in the drug-treated group. But how long did it take? So here it would be better to use another word, compared to the placebo group, the tumor size was smaller in the drug-treated group, in case when there is no time factor involved. Yeah, when this sentence doesn't talk about the time. So this is just to show you how important is the work with the verbs. Then there are some empty words. For example, here, the patient reacted well to the medicine. How? Was he cheerful? Was he happy? So the sentence would be much better when we say, after receiving the medicine, the patient's blood pressure increased or decreased. Sorry. You see the difference? And here are some examples from our manuscripts I'm getting. The treatment of parasitosis in fish should be justified in terms of improvement of health status and increase in fish welfare. How can you increase welfare? Increasing are some values or something. Here I would certainly replace the word increase with improvement. The health status and fish welfare improved. Or increase in feed particles. What does the author mean? Are these the numbers of particles or the sizes of particles they fed to the chickens? So we really have to look for the correct word. It was found that all formulations were green in color. Again, I underline the words that are not necessary. All formulations were green. The addition of in color is absolutely unnecessary. Very often you can see this in manuscripts, that something was green in color or smaller in size. That is unnecessary, just smaller or green or blue, whatever. So the economy of words is something that we really need to think about. We observe to record consistently lower head intent consistently. This is, we can save a few words here. Or another article, another sentence, table 4 shows that there was a significant decrease and so forth. Why not say glucose concentration decreased with the p-values during fasting? Table 4, that's it. And it's, you see how it is a half a line shorter. It is also necessary to check the meaning of the words. In one manuscript, I recently had found this sentence: the significant effect of red blood cell count in this study, which culminated to a decrease in the second week. To culminate is that something attains some highest peak. How can something culminate to a decrease? I don't know. So I just, to be on the safe side, I corrected that sentence. The estimated concentration of cholesterol was 6 millimole per liter. Was this estimated, or was it determined or measured? Authors very often change the words estimate, measure, and determine. which is a difference. An estimate is something different than measurement. Then there are some problems when, for example, using a hyphen, n dash or m dash. Again, I found on the internet recently this punctuation guide. I would recommend it highly to you because there are, for example, in references, many mistakes when people are using hyphen in pagination. And here you have a very nice explanation when and what should be used. Here is this explained, and I don't think we need to go into detail in that. Then Professor Day, who was for many years editor-in-chief of Journal of Bacteriology, also defined these so-called absolute words: unique, infinite, certain, perfect, essential, necessary. And he says something is perfect or not. So you cannot say it is very perfect, and you shouldn't be doing that. Unique is something is unique, and it cannot be very unique. So we have to be really knowledgeable about what can we do with these words. And this is the so-called pleonasms. This I borrowed again from Professor Day. And all the words that are in italics are unnecessary. When you think about those words, the second word is perfectly enough. Active consideration, every consideration is active in principle. And end result, if it is a result, it must be the end of something. Fewer in number, this is something like similar to what I mentioned, green in color. Fully recognize, honest truth. Imagine the truth that is not honest. That is not the truth. So this is, I just want to point out how important is this little play with words, so that we make our scientific language really exact and also nice. And here I have some dangling modifiers. This was a diploma paper that I was the peer reviewer of. Evaluation of physical and mechanical parameters of alpaca wool kept in Czech Republic and Austria. It was certainly not alpaca wool, but the alpacas, the animals themselves, kept in these two countries. So, and here is another nice one that we obtained for the veterinary journal about 2 years ago. So I always try to catch these things so that I can use them in the courses I'm teaching in. Conjunctival fungal flora of 120 domestic donkeys with normal eyes located around the Urmia lake. So who was located along the lake? The eyes or the donkeys? And the last one, I also underlined both gender, because this was exactly as the sentence went. This, first of all, it's plural, but in animals, gender is should not be used. Gender is grammatical gender, masculine, feminine, or neutrum, or in social studies, like gender studies. But animals have sex. And even human patients in a hospital are of male or female sex. There should not be used the word gender. That's why I pointed it out here. And here I have an example of an edited paragraph. Please read both of them, and someone can tell me which one you like better. Do we have some comments? The upper or the second one? The second one, it's better organized because it shows nicely the time sequence of the events. So this is a little example of editorial word, and you can do this work beforehand, before you submit a manuscript. And another thing that is worth of mentioning is the so-called discriminatory terminology. This was proposed by the WHO back in 1993. In men, in humans, it is very interesting, but also we ladies are human beings, not only men. So it should be correctly mentioned in humans, and instead of mankind, use the word humanity, and instead of manpower, workforce or personnel. Geriatrics should be replaced with the words older or elderly people, and with, for example, diabetic cases in human medicine, we should be called diabetic patients instead. Singular and plural, this is a big problem. This criteria is met, we will have no problem. If this criterion is met, this is, one is plural and the other is singular. This media lacks glucose. Again, this medium lacks glucose. This data is incomplete. If you say this set of data is incomplete, it's okay. But data is a plural of the datum. So we really need to be aware and use the correct word for singular and plural, as well as matrix, matrices, alga, algae, and all these things. And when in doubt, please look always for information. For example, here I found a very nice explanation. Very often our authors say the animals were fed with a diet. It's not necessary. Here you see, feed a diet. It's completely enough. So you have now all these internet resources, and they are very helpful, and don't be afraid and don't be lazy to use them. It's very important. Abbreviations. This is again sometimes a problem because they may increase misunderstanding between authors and readers. We have to explain every abbreviation when it is first used. And we should only use them if they occur more than 3 times in the text. We should not abbreviate a term that is used once or twice in a paper. That just makes confusion. And we also should use standard abbreviations and should not invent some new ones. And also we should not abbreviate some single words. Article length. Pardon?
Can you take a break?
Yes, this. I'm just at the end now.
Okay, just finish this, then you take a
Yes,
break.
yes. Article length, I'm finished in a moment. Longer does not mean more scientific or more fluent. Long articles are harder to understand, and the longer text is less likely to be published and less likely to be heard. So keep it short, that is very good. Now, these are just a few nuances with using of the words as we were measuring the current, because and while and so forth. And we also should not start our sentences with citations. It is always better to start with a fact and put the citations and tables and so forth at the end. Correct terminology is always a must. Do not be afraid of using dictionaries. We have many resources for this information. This is an example from the Web of Science, where the word trimester is being used for describing pregnancy in sheep and goats, and they are talking about first or second trimester. But the sheep and pigs are pregnant for one trimester. So not to speak about a trimester is not really correct. A second example of that. So in all fields of science, we really should follow the instructions, and otherwise we are at risk to be rejected. And this is the last, I just couldn't resist to share this with you, how these editors are strict when they don't find the point. And this is the European Association of Science Editors, and I recommend to you to look at the websites of the organization, because it has a very good guidelines for authors published in 30 languages. And these are the some of the website of the article. And these are the guidelines of EASE. And these are other information sources. And thank you for your attention. And I apologize for this long talk.
Well, thank you, ladies and gentlemen. We have heard from her. Mrs. Bakari? Okay, madam, please come. Now we'll come with questions. I know we have questions, we have requests, we have things. You will tell us your question, then you'll be given a slip of paper. You write down the summary, then you pass it back to us. But we first want to hear you. Madam, please have your seats. Yes. We want her to take some rest. Yes, so we'll be having an interactive session now. There'll be questions, there'll be comments. We'll have them written down. We'll pass them to you so that we can have a list and then you can respond to them. Do we have questions? Shall we take numbers? Nobody here? Okay, here. 1. Okay, 2 people? Just 2 comments? Okay, 3, 4. So please, after your comments, please write them down so that we'll pass it to her for her to respond to. The first person? Yes. Yes.
Thank you very much, sir. I want to appreciate Professor Evan for her presentations. Ma, I have 2 questions. The first one is that, okay, my questions are: 1, why is it that some editors of journals, especially in the Western world, they discriminate? They discriminate, and I can actually give one example. I won't mention the name of the journal, but it's actually in Germany. I wrote a manuscript I submitted, and the chief editor said they are not interested in the work, in the research. But I reply that why are they not interested? That I have seen some of the work published. That is it an attempt to discriminate? And he responded, apologized, and asked me to resubmit, which I did, and eventually the paper was published by that same journal. So that's why I'm raising that question, and I have had comments from other colleagues with respect to that. The second question I want to ask is with respect to the issue of when you were talking about analysis. In a situation, especially the graph, you have a software, you use it to run analysis, but you observe that the graph that is coming out from that software, you don't like it, or is not user-friendly. Then you decide to use another software. Is it really allowed?
Just a quick, we'll write it and bring it. Yes. Please.
Who is the second person?
Thank you, sir. I want to appreciate Prof for the lecture that has been given. I have a couple of questions which I want to ask. My first question, of course, some of my questions, they have to do with ethical issues in research, writing, and publishing. The first question I want to ask is, Ma, what is your opinion about guest authorship or ghost authorship? Okay, ma.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, ma. Then, secondly, I want to ask because I've been privileged to attend a couple of workshop and training courses,
I have problems to understand.
and one of the issues that came up, and some of those courses that I've attended, they give contradictory response. But I would like to also have your opinion on.
I think it's the
Okay, so
sound makes it a little difficult for me to understand exactly what you mean. So maybe it's better if you write it down. I'm sorry, but the sound is somehow dispersing here, and I don't want to make a mistake to say something incorrect. in the
Who
answer.
has a question to ask?
Oh yes.
You understand that?
Oh.
Okay.
Must all crops used for research work be
You can look at the other one. Some crops used for research work be of global acceptance. Yes, must some crops used for a research work must there be global acceptance? When you're working on crops, must there be of global acceptance? There are some crops that have local interest.
really must all crops
That you work on, must there be of global acceptance?
what are crops?
Plants.
Plants, yes, used for research must be
Of global acceptance, of the world accepted. I react to some of that. I'll respond to this.
okay. Yes, please. Hold on. It will be helpful. Well, I will answer. There is a question. How can we completely avoid using words in the title as keywords? Sometimes you have to repeat one, but not all. It's possible to avoid using too many, but sometimes it's just maybe one or two can be accepted also in keywords. It's not so 100% strict, but it's always better because these searching engines, they use all the terms, and if one term is repeated, so the chances of finding the respective article are a little less. I hope it's enough. Yes. Let's change into I understand it, but what should be done if a German editor knows a word is novel, but
Author should change
the term
to avoid problems.
I don't know, this is something that I don't understand really. Well, here is a question, when will Agricultura tropica and subtropica be indexed in Scopus? We are working on that. The present problem is now that Scopus insists on not only on diversified editorial board, but also on diversified authorship. So from tropical and subtropical countries, we should be getting more articles, more manuscripts from, let's say, many more African countries, from Philippines, from Vietnam, and now we have 3 manuscripts from Algeria, which I welcomed very much because and now we have the most articles from Nigeria, and that is the problem. I mean, we love all articles, but Scopus doesn't like this philosophy. They say the authorship should be more diversified. So we are struggling to get more diverse. If you have friends and colleagues in other African countries, please help us to get articles from those countries, and that will help us with Scopus. Yes? Why is... Yes, I think I explained that that question about Scopus already. They are the rules are always getting more and more strict. Although I don't think this would be so important. Why not have authors from fewer countries? Sometimes it's really not easy to see into the politics of these databases, and we just have to follow the rules as they change. That's the only thing that we can do, unfortunately. Yeah. This is what I don't understand. Why is that some editors... Yes, why is that some editors in Western journals discriminate against African authors? I have no explanation for this. I find it absolutely impossible and wrong, because good science can be done in any country. And if there is a valid science important for that area, it has to be published. And I don't understand this. I cannot give you a reply to this. I would never agree to such, but I know it's happening. Well, it's the combination of statistical methods. ANOVA is fine, and it's you can use combinations of some other methods. So it's always good to consult someone in statistics department.
There's a question that says, does your journal operate a free APC? Article processing charge? Does your journal run free article processing charge?
Our journal? It doesn't have. We have no processing fee. That is a very generous journal or generous university.
So they are free.
They are free, so far free. The dean of the faculty does not agree that we should charge. So it's free of charge. So one of the few, I guess, now.
Something else.
Yes, well, the plagiarism checks and the plagiarism itself is something that is now very popular, and there is no definition of, in fact, what is the acceptable length of a string of words. Is it 10 words, 12 words, 15 words? And I personally have a problem with this flagging of plagiarism checks, because if you still can sustain my next presentation about ethics in science, I have an explanation for that in a few minutes.
Well, thank you, ladies and gentlemen. I just want to give I'll probably want to make some response to some of the questions that she doesn't really understand. Yeah, thank you. Well, we say that the keywords should not repeat words from the title. That is as much as possible. Usually, when you have a word, you may have a synonym. It is not only one word that you can use for a sentence at all times. For those of us in crops, if you mention maize in the title, in the keywords, you may use it as Z-maize. If you have another title, we say probably growth and yield. When you get to the keywords, you may be very specific. Probably the plant height, probably the leaf area. Now you'll be specific. Those are ways in which you will not repeat the exact words in the title, also in the keywords. I think that question has come up several times like that. So that's the way to go about it. Just look for another synonym or another meaning of the word that you give about that. Well, somebody here is asking when agricultural subtropical will be indexed in Scopus. She has told us the conditions for Scopus, international authorship, international members. They have formed the members internationally, but then the authorship, they need people to send articles from almost all aspects of all the continents of the world. While we were discussing yesterday, I told her that we are also trying to get ourselves into Scopus. We discovered that most Nigerian journals, they are not in Scopus. But when I heard of their requirements, I can see that, well, we have not a long way, but a very longer way. When she showed me the requirement for Scopus, I said, no wonder we don't find any of our journals in Scopus. But we're also trying to get ourselves registered in IJOR. IJOR also has a requirement similar to that of Scopus, but in a lesser magnitude. So most of us will try to work on that. Well, she has said that the authors, they do not discriminate. But for my gentleman that you say you sent an article to a place. Now, if they reject your article, unfortunately, I am an editor, I've had courses to reject. If it doesn't fall within the scope of that journal, no matter how good it is, they will tell you it is beyond the scope of their journal. But you say eventually it was published. But when it is rejected, let us go back and see, is it in the scope of their journal? Some people are very specific. If it is beyond the scope of their journal, then for that one, probably you didn't meet some conditions or something. We may not put it off that there may be some human influences. But gone were the days when people were really discriminatory about blacks. But I think nowadays, I don't think that should come up that much again. My first publication in Taylor and Francis some years back, I almost wept. When I got it, at that time we were using post office. You send it to post office, you post and they'll correct physically. And when I got it back, it hurt. But eventually, one professor that was also mentoring me said, don't worry. Eventually, it was published. But you know, it was something that, for you to convince them that from Africa you can do something tangible, they may take some time. Some of them that really know about our status, they will say, well, we know what they have there. So for you to convince them, you may need to put on some extra effort. Sometimes it is not deliberate. It is based on what they are known in the background. Somebody here is asking, must all crops used for a research be of global acceptance? Yes, for those of us in crops. There are some crops that are specific to some environments. I've been writing an article on a fluted pumpkin that we popularly call Ugu. Ugu is now known in this part of the country, but in some years back, it was strictly restricted to the eastern part of the country. If you send such a paper out, I sent it out for an international thing. The editor kept sending back to me that he couldn't get reviewers. The reviewers did not know about that crop. And they had to go and read up to know about the crop. And they said they could not review on a crop like that, that I should look for reviewers in my neighborhood. But unfortunately, he said I should not get in reviewers that are even close to me. And those are the people that work on Ugu. So he said he doesn't want people working in my country. And he says he wants people in my region too. So sometimes like this, when we are talking of crops, their own crops also, when they send it to us to review, I don't think many of us can review an article on beetroot or, well, let's say something like mulberry, something like clove. They are not very common here. So it's sometimes regional. In a case like that, you may have to leave it to a regional journal. But for a crop like maize, like rice, they are all universally known. But when you are talking of Basel alba, Amunututu, I mean, who will accept that from you in the US? So things like that. So there are specific things that we have to cope with. Well, I think you still talk about plagiarism. You still want to talk about plagiarism? Yes. I thought you said you talk about plagiarism.
Yes.
Okay, so we'll still talk about plagiarism. I think she has that as a presentation. So let's wait for her. Well, other comments, we'll attend to them after this. For her to continue.
Okay.
So you may continue. You see how it is.
Okay.
You using this? Or are you using this?
So a few words, this will not be so long. I apologize for the first long one. A few words about ethical issues in scientific writing. Oops. As we said at the beginning, the science is the quest and search for truth. But unfortunately, also in science, we find some sorts. I think I should mention one point. I am prepared. I will make a PDF for you from my presentation, so that you can have it, and you don't need to make a lot of notes. Just listen, and you will have the material from me. The only thing is, I will only remove the pictures because of author's rights, so that I would not make a problem. So this was just because I see you always writing, but write down, of course. But I mean, it's not necessary for doing it all. Okay, so what is the unacceptable behavior in science? We all make errors and make mistakes, which is natural and human. So even the so-called honest errors and honest errors by negligence can be accepted in science, as long as they do not distort our data, our results, and our interpretations. But what is not acceptable is misconduct, and there are various forms of misconduct in science. The first is plagiarism plus self-plagiarism, duplicate publication, theft of intellectual property and data, and illegal use of figures, pictures, and so forth, falsification and fabrication of data. Now, I like this graph. This is from a publication by Dr. Luschel, now several years old, but it shows you nicely the degree of unacceptability of problems. Self-plagiarism, when one is plagiarizing own previous work without acknowledging it. And then sloppiness, when the text is prepared not really carefully and not well enough. The next step is so-called salami publishing. That is a term used by editors, which means that the that your results are cut into the least publishable units so that the number of publications is increased. And double publication again when we are publishing the same thing for a second or even third time. Worse even is then data theft, forging and trimming, which means that the author, for example, if the data are not very convincing, so they just change the values so that the statistics do work and the data are trimmed to meet the expectations of the authors. And the worst is falsification and fabrication. Falsification is really when the authors completely change what they have got, and fabrication is they invent data that are not existing. So plagiarism, here I have a nice definition from my dictionary, and I underlined here the words pretending. It's the practice of using or copying somebody else's idea or work and pretending that you thought it. And the second definition from the same is again that has been secretly copied. So in both these definitions, you can see and feel the bad intention of the author, of the person, okay? And here is the definition of plagiarism that is used by the Elsevier, a publishing house. Copying of ideas, data, or text, or various combinations of the three, without permission or acknowledgement of the first person, okay? And once I was asked by the team of the Web of Science people to participate in a user panel. And while we were evaluating the new features for Web of Science, we were able to access the Web of Science that goes back to the beginning of the last century, to the year 1900. And so I used the chance, and then I used the word plagiarism, and you can see I made them by decades. And here at the beginning, there was just a few, articles, and interestingly, these were French psychology and psychiatry articles where the word plagiarism occurred. Then there is a long time nothing, and this was, you see, I've done this in 2013. And here the word plagiarism goes up. And this was, again, the time, in fact, when we had computers, and to detect plagiarism became much easier. And this is the last I made in last November, and this goes back to 1980. And you see these are the papers in which the word plagiarism occurs, and these are the citations. So it is something that seems to have an increasing trend, unfortunately. Well, what is a solution for plagiarism? A good paraphrase. As maybe you remember, I told you when you work with somebody else's papers, it is always good to use and to use own words to interpret and to comment the data of others. And that's the prevention of plagiarism. You express it in your own words. And so a paraphrase is we have to reproduce someone else's ideas in our own words. Unacceptable behavior in science is always a problem. And for example, in the United States, they started a Code of Federal Regulations as of the year 2005, just to control the unethical behavior in science, because science research is in fact funded by the taxpayers, and everything should be really truthful and reliable. Now some Other forms of unethical behavior, that is self-plagiarism, as I mentioned, and salami publishing, redundant publication. Again, when authors publish the same thing twice or even more times, and they do not acknowledge their first source that they produced. And you see there is an increasing trend. I found a paper where they found it from 170 and to 2000 or 800 in the year 2012. And the term coercive citation is again something relatively new, and that describes the unethical behavior of editors. You know that all the tendencies to publish in good journals, so-called good journals, excuse me, and having impact factors and so forth. And when the authors are evaluated by the type of journals in which they are published, it sometimes makes the editors want to improve their image, and they just ask the authors to cite papers from their journals in the last 2 years, which is manipulating authors. Should not be done. Self-plagiarism, again, same hypothesis, data, discussion, or conclusions. And the references do not contain the original work by the author. And again, here is one case from Germany where the citing author says that among more than 300 papers, there was a lot of falsified material, and another big group of articles contained manipulated data. And this is about human cancer, which is when the problem is the human health, it's really something very bad. So falsification means trimming of protocols, reporting only positive results, failure to report negative results, or side effects, of course. And this is, again, dangerous because it potentially affects the public health in humans. So as a consequence, they have some medicine being taken out of the market. In year 2004, it was a company, Merck, and in 2013, Novartis. No, I'm fine. Yeah, thank you. Thanks, I'm fine. Fabrication of data means that the publications are based on non-existent, completely fabricated data. Believe it or not, there are even scientists who do things like that. And at Harvard University, that was a famous case of Dr. Darcy, who was faking data in 52 papers in 14 years. It's incredible. And this, of course, can have devastating effects on the institutions. And if you want to be in Wikipedia, so you can behave as Dr. Darcy, you can find him in Wikipedia and the whole story. It's very interesting to read, but very sad on the other hand. So, and here I have the graph of scientific and fabrication, and you see again how it's increasing occurrence of these terms. And the problem is that the traditional view, retraction is a result of random non-intentional errors. This was a philosophy of authors of this article I am citing. But when they made the study and they analyzed more than 2,000 articles retracted in life sciences, they found, to their big surprise, that there were in 43% of cases fraud or suspected fraud, 14% duplicate publications, plagiarism, and errors, mistakes in data. So this was a big surprise for authors of the study. And they also found that these were very high quality journals in which these articles were published that had to be retracted later on. And here is a very nice retraction statement from the Web of Science, which I like very much. Just read it and see what it's about. Yeah. And I like the last sentence saying, attempts to contact the corresponding author for an explanation were unsuccessful. Well, that's it. And this is what happens. The journal should put a water sign and saying retracted for an article that had to be retracted for these reasons that we just mentioned. And interestingly, they found some geographical differences in some traditional countries in science like United States, Germany, Great Britain. They found a high proportion of fraud, whereas in the newly emerging countries in science, such as China and India, they found much more of plagiarism and duplicate publications. And the numbers of retractions are increasing, which is very nicely documented by the service Retraction Watch. For example, during the COVID era, they had hundreds of retracted articles, or what the journals can do is so-called expression of concern, which means that the journal knows that something is wrong with the article, but they may be afraid of or do not retract it, but they express their concern that there is something wrong. And there is a company, that's an organization, Committee for Publication Ethics, that was founded in 1997. And this organization says that the main purpose of retractions is to correct the literature and ensure the integrity of research and science rather than to punish the authors who misbehave. So this is an organization that gives a lot of very good advice to editors of journals. And here you see how it looks, scope. And there is another service called Retraction Watch, and it has the transparency index, and here you can also see what is happening on the retraction era. Gift authorship, there was a question about gift authorship. Again, this can be provoked by the need to publish quickly for tenure, for professorship, and for other reasons. And you can sometimes even trace the motivations of these authors. I know several cases where someone wanted to become a professor very quickly, and all of a sudden his name appeared on publications that were known that he has never anything to do. So this is something that is unethical, and it should not be tolerated. It shouldn't be done. It is, all the bad things we are doing in science, in a time they come back as a boomerang. It just shoots back. So true and honest behavior is a must. And therefore, in connection with these misbehaviors like gift authorship, I present here these authorship guidelines. These are very useful, and I really recommend you to look what are the definitions, who are the authors, who are contributors, whom we have to thank. And this is good to know about it. And here, this is a few slides from a webinar we had last spring about the dark side of science, misconduct in biomedical research. Dr. Elisabeth Pick is a Dutch scientist who lives in the United States, and since 2014, she was able to prove misconduct of authors in manipulating illustrations. Here you see some of her results, duplications, and she has done all this work manually because then there were no software for detecting these problems. And she also, these are some of her results. And what is the very sad part of it, here is the graph, when she found that even after 5 years that she made the journals aware of the problems, you see the blue part did not do not follow any measures to correct the problem. The yellow part is where this was corrected and just a few articles were retracted. So the journals are still very slow in correcting the situation even when the misconduct was proved. Not interesting. And now she says here how we can prevent scientific misconduct in a few points, which I think we should always be aware of and do the right thing. Another form of unacceptable behavior, for example, submitting a manuscript to more than one journal at the same time. This happened to us repeatedly. Not reporting to one of these journals acceptance by the other. This means wasted time and effort of editors and reviewers in the second and third journal. So what we can do? We can limit abuse of the internet and the copy and function form, inform young scientists about all these problems and make them aware that we always have to be honest. Name and shame and consequences. Codex of ethics is something that should always be done. There are some software materials already, this cross-check, authenticate, you probably know them. The problem is still that we don't know how many words, in fact, are to be considered as plagiarism. And if there is a citation after a string of words that is designated by authenticate, I have a problem to accept that because that citing author is not really doing anything bad. And this is a very nice article by one German scientist who says that to focus on bibliometrics make the papers less useful. And he says that when we are evaluated in silly ways, like evaluating the impact factors of journals in which you are publishing, so, and he says we will behave in silly ways. So in scientific community there is a tendency really to persuade the authorities not to evaluate the journals or the impact factors and things like that, but the real work of the authors. About plagiarism, there are some very good sources. I will maybe add a few more to you. And for example, there are some conferences that have now in Europe become every year event. So you see the fight against these behaviors is on the road. And at the beginning of the century, there was the initiative for open access. And open access is something fine, but it has the dark side, which is the predatory journals, or now called blacklist journals. And this definition was coined by Jeffrey Beal, that is the librarian at the Colorado University in Denver. And these are in fact people who are misusing the golden model of open access, where you have to pay the article processing fee. They charge it without really doing the proper peer review. There is no digital archiving and no quality search and no control. So they also refuse to return your manuscripts in case you make up your mind and decide for another journal. And here are the numbers of predatory journals in one of Jeffrey Beal's articles. Look at those numbers. It started somewhere 2011, and God knows where it is in the year 2024. This just goes until 2017. So we have to be really very careful in where to publish. So what is the philosophy? These are very aggressive, and they use mostly email marketing. That is often only one person and one PC. They search for manuscripts on internet, and mostly located in India, Pakistan, Iran, Turkey, Malaysia, Saudi Arabia. And they, for example, indicate false names of editorial board members or so forth. So false indexing. You find there, for example, Indian indexing. Who knows what is Indian indexing? Nobody knows. And so you see the serious journals are really making people aware of these journals. And he also is this was the so-called Beall's list of publishers that he published in 2013, but 4 years later it had to be taken off the internet because there were some people threatening him with death. So these are the things happening in science. And this was, for example, this is an example of an email that I obtained. Very typically regards editor, but no name there. Or these are another ones that I received. They are coming very often. So what is important? Please, this initiative, you have the link here, Think, Check, Submit org. That is very important. Before you submit your manuscript, be very careful, select a journal that is a legitimate one. So here are some references and recommended reading, and this is my thank you.
Thank you very much. I think we've heard almost everything. We appreciate you. Thank you very much, ma. We have heard a lot of things about writing, research findings. She has told us that we need to solve the problem, and that is why we should go into research, not just for the sake of researching. There must be a question to be answered, and after the research, you go back and see whether you have answered the question, and then some other questions that may even emanate or arise from it that will prompt further research. And he has told us about a lot of things, your aims and the objectives, the methodology, the introduction, the materials and methods, and a lot of things. Now she has also told us about plagiarism. When we were discussing yesterday, I was sharing my experience. I sent out an article to an international journal, and they returned it to me that I did self-plagiarism, that I copied myself. And I was asking, from who do I take the permission? But I had to tell them that I was only repeating analytical procedures of analysis of soil. The way you report it in one paper is the way you report it in 100 papers. The way I report nitrogen analysis is the way anybody will report nitrogen analysis. So these are some of the things that we may come across in plagiarism. But then, as she told me, that now beholds on the editor to look at the result of the system and not be able to sort out. But then when we are quoting ourselves, we may have to change the paragraph. You may have to change the arrangement. Eventually, that was what I did. Instead of starting with the last sentence, I now start with the first sentence and things like that. That is what the machine wants. So please, these are some of the things that we need to do. But before we go into this final reaction, I want to clear some of the things that we couldn't clear the other time. Somebody was saying that writing long sentences may be a way of preventing plagiarism. Well, as I've said, that may be an option for us. We have to reframe the sentences to avoid plagiarism. Somebody is asked, how can we completely avoid using keywords that is in title? I think we said something about that. We may have to. Then Mosol crops, I think we have mentioned something about this. But most other comments, I think they are things that we have talked about. Do we have some fresh comments to this plagiarism? Do we have some responses again? Now a time for general discussion, please. Apart from the ones that we have talked about. Do we have some other things that we want to talk about? Or is there anything that we have not really reacted to? Some of the questions I don't know whether there are some of them that we have not responded to. Is there anything that is still present that I want to say? But I have a personal thing that I want to say. From my experience in editing, I've seen many of us that will report our title, our tables and figures. Tables and figures are not supposed to be reported. They are supposed to be cited to support your report. You say table 1 shows the effect of this and this, and now you start reporting all the things in the table, and you not cite that table 1 again. No. You make your sentence, and then you refer to the table. Make your sentence and refer to the table. The tables are not meant to be studied. The tables and figures are for you to show to support your sentences. So please let's take note of that. If there are no questions, no comments again. Yes. So if there are no questions, I want us to share some of our experiences. Are there some of us that have published that want to share some experiences with others, some colleagues? Any story about any publishing? We have heard of somebody that has his paper rejected, but at the end of the day, got published. Do you have one or two like that? Yes, gentlemen.
I'd like to appreciate her for the explanation so far and clarity presented to us. Now, one of the questions submitted, I asked a question there. She answered one has not been answered. And by extension, possibly also to share an experience. Partly with editor discrimination, I will use that word, from abroad or Western countries. Imagine a situation where a paper was submitted, in fact 2, one rejected, the other continued the process. Now at the point of publishing, the reviewers sent their reviews, no question about the title, which stated a novel approach. Now, 2 days to publishing, then the editor says, change the title. Now, this is where the conflict comes. It truly is a novel approach because no one that I have seen or read have used that approach. Possibly to discredit that methodology coming from Africa. The editor insisted that I change it. Now, at that point, I didn't have a choice because it's either I don't or he says he's not going to. I presented another option, very similar as that word novel. He still tells me to change it. Now, I asked him, at that point, is there another approach similar as this that he has read of? No answer. But he wants me to change that novel. Eventually, I changed it. But that's why I'm asking the question here. In a normal scenario with an editor, at that So I want to ask, what is your suggestion to me as an author, to that editor, if I come across such a situation? Tell the editor I am insisting on not changing that word novel, or yield to what he's saying. Meanwhile, there is no approach like that online.
I think that is not correct behavior of the editors, and it is always necessary to get more views or more expert opinions. Let's say we are sometimes, when in doubt, we had cases where we asked 4 or 5 peer reviewers until a decision could be made about it, because we didn't want to hurt the author, but also not hurt the science, which is a big responsibility, both to the authors and both to the journal. But if you really have a good new methods, I see no reason why it should not be accepted. And unfortunately, there is a lot of prejudice on the part of many journals and editors. And I cannot give you a good advice how to combat that. But the time you have to persist and perhaps approach a different journal. Maybe you find editors who are more open. It is, you know, it's a very complex and difficult issue. And if in science, in this quest for truth, we should not be somehow led by prejudices against Africa, against such and such country, against such and such continent, but really look for the results, what the science brings. So I would not be somehow willing to accept this kind of decision or this kinds of attitudes by the editors. The editors have to be open also to new ideas.
Well, yes. Well, personally, I've had a little thing like that. You may have to go offline with the editor. I mean, go unofficial. You may have to send him personal messages and give him personal conviction. If you have something that is new and you know it is better, you now interact with him and show the defect or the advantage of that over the others. Some editors will be very careful of accepting new things because it will be held that this is the editor's work. They will not cite you. They may be citing the editor because they say it's an image of the journal. So they say, we saw this on this journal, we saw this on this journal. That's why the editor may be very careful. So you may have to go personal with the editor and be sending personal things. And then when the person is convinced, then you may have a luck with it. I have a similar experience with it in this university. We are now using I think the AC in this place is Hisense. I've been seeing Hisense air conditions. I was the one that first brought Hisense air conditioning into this university. When we were doing accreditation in 2015, I had a lot of problem with them at audit. They said I brought fake material, but I knew it was the new thing in Lagos. And I just bought it personally for my home. And I said, well, let me bring this to the university. The editor said no, that they had never heard of that product. But unfortunately today, that is what they are using now in the whole of the university. You might have something experienced like that. You have to persist and be sure what you are doing. Thank you very much. Yes, sir?
Thank you, sir. I want to ask with regards to plagiarism. This is another experience I had, sir. It has to do with, I sent a paper to archivals and the same thing with animal science and technology. When they checked, when I submitted the paper, they told the manuscripts. I was told that the the level of plagiarism is above 30%. And I was actually, I was taking a base and I went back using the Turnitin. And when I checked with the Turnitin, it was less than 14%, what I saw. But I just have a second thought that let me add the whole manuscript, which include the references. And when I included the whole references, it was actually 36%. And I was confused that normally when we are checking for plagiarism, should references included? Because some of these journals, even the format they give to you in writing references, there is no way you want to do it. It's more or less like word for word, because they will ask you to cite the DOC, and which were actually cited in the journal, in the reference section. So that makes it the plagiarism level to be very high. So I want to ask, should references be considered as part of plagiarism in checking?
Now, should references be considered when they're checking the plagiarism? I think once you reference.
Yes. No. References just should not be considered as plagiarism. That's something different. If I understand correctly, the references section. The section of references should not be evaluated by those programs. There is no point in that.
References should not be considered.
It's just the text. The references, you cannot change the references. They are given, even if they are with mistakes, but you as author, even when citing, you just cannot do anything with them. And they should never be taken in the evaluation of that Authenticate or whatever other program. If I understand correctly what you said. Yeah, thank you.
Well, then our plagiarism, once you cite the references, it is no more plagiarism. If you quote somebody and you cite him, but then when you are doing the higher plagiarism test, it may mark it. It may still highlight it. But once you are supported with the references, it is no more plagiarism. Yes?
When you mention plagiarism, you are actually talking about the crime aspect of it. We are expected to refer to it as similarity check. And maybe the outlets the paper was sent to, in using especially the Turnitin, there are some settings at the background. If the setting has been made not to skip some aspect of the similarity, when your paper will be checked to see the aspect that is similar to other paper in the whole world. And if your own account, you're using your account, the account that is being used is set at the background, that it should skip short sources, skips a lot of things. There are some people that will set it to skip a lot of things. So once you run it, it will give you a lesser percentage. Ideally, the references at the back, it's not covered under it. You're supposed to remove the references everywhere. Whether publishing outlet, institution, you want to turn your project into an institution, you're supposed to remove the references part. Okay? That journal you sent to, it's possible the references part was actually removed. But the setting there, maybe they set it to check similarity of almost everything. If it is in quotation, check. But maybe the one you use, the person has set it in such a way that if there are some sentences in quotation, which is not actually your own, it should skip. Do you understand? So that's your own. If you're checking with your own account, go back to your setting. If your setting has skipped a lot of things, it will definitely give you a lesser percentage. People that are checking it with the correct setting, they will give you a higher percentage. Those people, I can bet that they didn't check your references. It's their setting, and it's your setting that brought about the gap in the difference. Sir, I have a comment, sir. Should I add my own comment? My comment is that the other time when Prof was giving the lecture on keywords. Yeah, she said that we shouldn't pick keywords from title of our papers. Okay, that keywords should not reflect or should not duplicate title of the paper. Actually, I'm hearing that one for the first time today. And you now gave an advice that it's better to use synonyms of those keywords that appear in the title. I would have suggested that if synonyms are used, actually when one's paper is being searched online, it's usually the keywords that the software uses to fetch the paper. So if you use synonyms of keywords of your title, and those synonyms are not found in the body of the paper, that paper might not be found when it's being searched online or when you want to make references to it. So I would have suggested that, though it might be a little bit tasking, but not as tasking as writing the paper originally. When you are working on key terms, read the paper. There will be some other terms that are active terms in the body of the paper that we can use as keywords rather than synonyms of the terms that came up in the topic. I don't know whether, So it's better to use words that appear in the body of the paper so that when people are citing us, people are searching, our papers can be found. That's my point.
Thank you very much. We have the last comment there. We have somebody there. Oh, we have two there. Yes, yes.
Thank you very much, Prof, for the wonderful presentation. The question I have, Ma, has to do with some publishers. There was a time I sent out a paper for publication. It was reviewed. The reviewers' comments were sent back to me, so I attended to the comments and resubmitted the corrected version. So when it was accepted, I was asked to pay some money, which I did. So the galley proof was not sent to me after I paid. But because I paid the money in dollars and it was outside Nigeria, it was handled by my accounting officer in a Guarantee Trust Bank. So the bank charges, the money that the pay charge was paid in dollars, but the bank charges was deducted from my account in Naira. So I don't know what happened. I used the address that was sent to me to pay the amount. But they said that the connecting bank outside Nigeria could not find the recipients or the beneficiary of that money. That's the journal account. So they had to reverse it. The payment I made in dollars, they had to reverse it to my DOM account after like a month. And by the time they reversed it, of course, I was not informed by the bank. I wasn't informed by any person. And the journal also did not even ask, they didn't send maybe like a reminder for me to just make my comment. So when I saw that it was reversed, I saw less than 20% of the money I paid in dollars. And they said what they deducted from my DOM account was the bank charges for the reversal. I said it was okay. I have plenty of guys around here and even outside. So I went to them to ask questions, how I can go about it. My primary fear was that I did not want them to think that, this man is from Nigeria. Maybe she wants to do a smart one. I didn't know. It was later I saw some money in my account. I had to check, and I called the bank and they told me that the transaction was reversed. So they said I should continue to do mails to them. So I continued to mail them over 200 mails. Not one was reversed. That was in 2019. So by 2022, I called my Oga. My Oga was in the UK. He's resident in the UK. So I told him everything that happened. All the mails I had been sending, I have the history of all the communications. They did not respond to just one. So he advised that, I told him that my fear is I should send it to another journal. I said my fear is that I don't want them to think that this Nigerian woman, maybe I did not even pay before. Maybe that payment that was reversed was not what it is. So for my integrity to be intact with them, I told him, he said, okay, I suggested to him that what if we resend this paper untouched? Just exactly the same thing we had sent earlier, and see whether they will review it as a new submission, which I did. So I sent it, everything was intact, I did not change anything. So by the time it got to them, it was reviewed as usual. They made some little corrections, grammatical errors. I effected the changes, I resubmitted. They sent a letter that it was accepted for publication. And this time around, I had to go to the bank myself and look for a bank I can know the accounting officer that is winning. Not that they will tell me it's their headquarters in Lagos. And it will just be story. At the end of the day, the money will go. So when I sent the money, I did not see galley proof just like the other time. Neither did I find publication up to today. This is over 18 months. All the communications, once again, were no communication. In fact, nobody. I sent mails to the journal office. I sent mails to the editor-in-chief. I sent mails to the assistant editors, associate editors, two of them that I have their numbers. So nothing has happened. My Oga in one of the Oceania countries in New Zealand took over the responsibility. He said he will continue to mail them. So at the end of the day, he told me that he's suspecting that these people are fraudulent, they are frauds. So at the end of the day, as I stand, the paper is not published. The money is gone. I have sent over 200 mails. And some people have said that I should blacklist them. I should go to the internet and write things against them. But these people exist. I don't know. Who are they? What? And the journal is a university-based journal.
Well, thank you very much.
So that is my problem now, sir. So this work, the results are pending. This is the bulk of work I did some years ago. I spent millions of naira to do that work. And Oga is very, very angry and frustrated. How do we go about this? I have been waiting patiently. Even my supervisor in the UK told me that I should send all the documents to him, that he will publish it elsewhere. But I am still afraid because I don't want them to say that I have plagiarized or I have tried to publish one article several times. Well, so this is my situation.
Thank you very
much. My money is gone.
Sister.
I'm ready to spend more money to publish elsewhere, if that is what it will take. But how do I come out of this mess?
Well, thank you very much, my sister.
Thank you very much.
We have had our experience. I assume that most of us are young lecturers coming up. We may not have got too many or too much experience. And this is why the university always insists, when you look at the requirement for our international publications, the university standard is a bit strict. Before you send a journal or an article to an international journal, check the status of that journal. It is very, very important. Most usually, journals between volumes 1 and 5, oh God, avoid them. Now, on a very personal note, articles with journals with article volume 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, now avoid them. articles with article paying charges, you don't have to go for them. You have reputable publishing houses. Here is one that said it is free. The last time I checked their website, I think they are volume God knows. Those ones are reputable. I want to tell you, you may not have to pay APC for articles if you can write very good things. I can't remember the last time I paid for article. Because when I was still publishing with Pakistan, Internet Publications. But by the time you go to people like Elsevier, by the time you go to Cambridge Publishers, I'm not advertising for anybody. But by the time you go to these reputable publishing houses, they will not take trash from you, but they will not collect kobo. My first publication with Taylor and Francis, I used post office. We were using post office at that time in the 90s. It may take about 6 months for them to review and send it back to you. But you know you are having the correct thing that you are doing. At the end of the day, an article may take about 1 year or 2 years to publish, but you're not going to be scammed. So please, next time you want to send an article to a publisher, first check their website, see their production history, see how much they are produced, and see how much they are published. Some of them will say just pay $100. In 2 weeks, they'll tell you have your paper out. Be wary of such things. This is a very good example. My sister, I will advise that you take the article to a more renowned publisher that will be free. So you don't pay for another $100 or $200 again. Make sure you write something very good. You see a lot of publishing houses in UK and there are other countries that are very good. Most especially university journals, even outside. If you have university journals, most of them are likely to be reputable. Thank you very much. Yes, we have the last comment there. Oh, again.
Thank you, ma'am. This happened to a colleague of mine. Actually, he sent a paper out and the paper was rejected. After like 6 months, he took the paper back that, okay, I think I can send it to somewhere else. By the time he sent it out, it was returned to him that he's having 98% plagiarism. And by the time he went online, because he didn't even go online, he saw it as, okay, my work, let me send it to somewhere else since it has been rejected here. So by the time he went online, how possible? He discovered that this same paper has been published word for word by another, I think a Pakistan country. He said he sent a mail to the editor that this work that he sent to you, how come? What happened? And till date, the editor didn't reply his mail. He sent several mails and nothing happened. And that work has been published forever. He couldn't do anything about it. So this is an advice that sometimes when you send your papers out and maybe it's one way or the other it's being rejected, it's better you quickly find a good place to send it before it's being taken in transit by the editors and being published. Thank you.
Well, that's another experience. When we are sending our papers, let us be very careful where we send them to. I've heard of a case like that in Nigeria. Somebody was an editor, but then he was probably taking data from other people's articles and publishing. Eventually, it was a scandal and a lot of things happened to that person. So let us be very careful, let us be wary. Was that paper still published in your name or they changed the authors? They found other authors for the work. So please, let us be very careful where we send our papers to. I have some comments here that I want us to. Now, somebody says, how do we manage faulty data and unexpected findings? Can somebody throw more light on that? Who was that? How do we manage faulty data and unexpected findings? Well, if I will just talk about this, when you see a data is faulty, please do not falsify your data. And this she has told us like that. Do not let us falsify our data. I always tell my project students, a negative result is still a result. We may go with the field with the bias that we go to the left, and you get there, you see that it goes to the right. Please do not publish it as going to the left. Because publishing it as going to the left, as right, is an information to others that this is not the way. So others will not be just scouting around in the bush. We know that that is not the way. They will focus into another area. So when you have a faulty data or you have something that you cannot explain, make sure you understand what you have done. Except there is an error in your interpretation or whatever. Go back and cross-check everything that you have done. But if you are still convinced that there has not been any error, please publish it as it is, and nobody will take you for that. That is that, please. Now, what is the importance of putting professors and things like that as first author in your PhD work? Is that it? Well, some of us may finish our PhD work. You are not obliged to put your supervisor as the first author in all the papers. I don't believe that because I've supervised somebody for a PhD, that he has to put my paper as the first author in all the papers. No. However, if you are so complacent, I've had a lot of students that when they finish their degree, once they take their certificate, it is bye-bye. I may pick the write-up up in my shelf, knowing what I've put in there, having access to the raw data, I may write it up for myself. If I write it up, I'm still going to be the first author. But you are going to be the second author because we still did it together. But if you have written it, after the supervision, you read it, you say, okay, please, help me look at this. Or you go through it. You are the first author yourself. If I come up there, but it is not fair for you not to put the supervisory committee there as co-authors. You may still have some people that you want to involve. You will have to put them after the first author, the major the supervisor and the co-teams. But then she has also talked about, I think you said gift authors, gift authorship.
Yes.
Professor Salako called it Salvation Army. Yes, the former VC says Salvation Army. You want to save your friend. It is time for promotion. So 2, 3, 4 people will put their names. That was the time I was making assessment for our promotion, and I got one paper. I saw about 11 or 12 authors on that paper, and I read the paper. It was an experiment of about 3 months. The experiment was conducted about 3 months, 4 months, and they had about 12 people there. Obviously, you know that paper is a Salvation Army. So please let us be very wary of this. That when it comes to the day of preparing for inaugural and you want to write your contribution to knowledge, you will have a problem. Because it will not come into your scheme of work. It will not come into your area of work. And then it will just be hanging. Let us be very careful of that. So if your supervisor is part of the team that is writing it up, you have to acknowledge him as the second author. If you are the one that is, but if he's just telling you that I published the paper, you are not obliged to be the first author. I have another one here that says, well, if you have a lot of data, it is not compulsory that you publish all your information in just one article. For example, if you finish your PhD work, which I assume will have got some aspects of various aspects, you may be picking each aspect. If it is detailed enough, you write it as an article. Even from your PhD work, I expect that you should have at least 6 or 7 articles that are reasonable from it. I know how many I have from my own PhD thesis. If you have done something very proper, the economic study can go separate, the biological study can go separate, the chemical aspect can go separate, and you don't have to publish everything. So all your data they don't have to come in just one paper. But make sure you have some. But she talked of article proliferation. No, please. Like some of us that work on intercrop, maize and melon, we now publish maize separately. We publish melon separately. But the two of them, they were together on the field. That is not too good. Don't let us do something like that. I hope I've covered that enough. So, do you have any random comments? Okay.
Yeah, just a few words. Just a few words.
Okay.
Okay. I just want to say that it has been such a wonderful time with you, and having such a good audience. Was a real pleasure, and I wish you all much success and make your good science and publish it well. All the best to you. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much, Madam. As you said, right from your baby, you've been dreaming of coming to Africa.
Yeah, thank you.
She was 80 years old last week. And she said that for the past 80 years, she's been dreaming of Africa. And that was why she showed some people that came for tourism in Africa that she's been dreaming. Now you have met Africans. So you have not come to Africa alone, you have met Africans, you have discussed with Africans, you have interacted with Africans. Congratulations, sir. So she's been dreaming to meet Africans and to come to Africa for the past 80 years. Now her dream is fulfilled. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. We'll collect the copy from her, and with your email addresses, we'll send across the soft copies. All things being equal. Thank you very much. Good day. Thank you. It is a very good time. Thank you very much. Thank you.